Hello, and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Tian Yu. Coming up in this edition, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the European Union will pause its trade retaliation against the United States until early next month. Hopes for breakthroughs in the latest Gaza ceasefire talks have been high, but progress has stalled after weeks of indirect negotiations in Doha. A South African program to develop a new HIV vaccine is facing an uncertain future after the U.S. withdrawal of critical funding. We start off in Europe. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the European Union will pause its trade retaliation against the United States until early next month. She says the bloc will continue to prepare response options. The announcement came after U.S. President Donald Trump announced 30% tariffs on the EU and Mexico. Francis Kuo has more.
U.S. tariffs dominating headlines across Europe. The European Union's 27 member states grappling with Donald Trump's announcement of a 30% levy on European goods into the U.S. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying the EU will hold off on countermeasures for now.
We have developed a second potential list of countermeasures that is by now agreed to. We are not there yet. This is very important. This is now the time for negotiations. But this also shows we are prepared for all eventual scenarios.
But tougher words from French President Emmanuel Macron posting on social media. This announcement comes after weeks of intense engagement by the Commission in negotiations with the United States on the basis of a solid offer made in good faith. With European unity, it is more than ever up to the Commission to assert the Union's determination to resolutely defend European interests. In particular, this implies speeding up the preparation of credible countermeasures by mobilizing all the instruments at its disposal, including anti-coercion, if no agreement is reached by August 1st. Trump doubling down during an interview on the U.S. news network Fox News.
And it's basically telling countries that we are going to give you the privilege to shop and work in our country. And some of the countries are very upset now because they've been taking advantage of us for 30, 40 years. And I had it stop.
But experts warn Trump's tariffs could backfire.
If you look at the trade issue in an isolated way, I would very much recommend to take a hard stance because in my view, and this is also confirmed by economic models, the United States might even suffer more than the European Union from those tariffs which are implemented by or planned to be implemented by the European Union.
A lot is at stake. The EU is a top U.S. trading partner, and together they account for 30% of global trade, with the EU exporting more than $620 billion worth of goods to the U.S., including cars, aircraft, medicinal, and agricultural products.
This is a very important market for us. This market accounts for around 350 million euros yearly for dairy products, cheeses in particular. We export 25 tons of cheese to the United States yearly, and so this is a shock.
And the shock waves are bound to hit global markets Monday as this turbulent trade war ratchets up.
That was Francis Kuo reporting. More on the trade disputes, European and Mexican leaders have vowed to counter the latest tariff decision from the U.S. president. Donald Trump had sent letters to 23 trading partners within a week, including Canada, Japan, and Brazil. The letters set blanket tariff rates ranging from 20 to 50%. Kate Fisher reports from Washington, D.C.
The European Union being on the receiving end of a 30% tariff, along with Mexico, those were announced this weekend, and they are two of the US's biggest trading partners. So it will make a huge impact on both them as well as the rest of the global economy. And they join this growing list of countries to which Donald Trump has sent letters outlining their new tariff rates, which will go into effect on August the 1st. if a deal isn't negotiated before then, and they include two of its biggest allies in the Asia Pacific, Japan and South Korea, as well as several other countries, going up to 40% for the likes of Myanmar and Laos. It's just another section in this barrage of modifications, pauses and changes to Donald Trump's tariff policy that is causing so much uncertainty for consumers and markets and investors alike. The European Union has said that they want to negotiate. That is still what they're trying to do, but that they do have retaliatory tariffs planned and ready to go should they need to do so. Donald Trump has said to that, well, if they do that, he will just add more tariffs. Donald Trump saying he wasn't happy with how things are going so far. But so far, there are only two countries who've managed to strike a deal with the United States, at least a framework of one, the UK and Vietnam. So there is still a lot of talking to do with a lot of countries.
That was Kate Fisher reporting. Turning to the Middle East, hopes for breakthroughs in the latest Gaza ceasefire talks have been high, but progress has stalled after weeks of indirect negotiations in Doha. Jonathan Regev reports from Tel Aviv.
So the ceasefire negotiations pause seem to be stalled, and the Prime Minister is meeting with some top security advisors, top security personnel. Why so? There's one sticking point which is derailing the whole thing. That is the issue of this humanitarian city in Rafah that was just brought up. In order for that city to actually take place, Israel needs to maintain control of the Moraga corridor, which would be the northern edge of that city, separating it from Khan Yunis, from the rest of the Gaza Strip. This is something that Israel wants to create, but Hamas thoroughly objects. Why so? It would be perhaps the first time that Israel would create some kind of an alternative to Hamas, that within Gaza there would be an area quite small, only the city of Rafah and the surrounding areas, but which would be independent from Hamas control. This is something that Hamas is clearly concerned from, because it would lose not only the security control, but also the civilian control. This is something that worries Hamas, and this is something that is currently derailing the negotiations. How much can Israel perhaps concede? How much can Israel be flexible on this? This is what will be on the table as the security cabinet, or this security meeting convenes. If Israel would perhaps be a bit more flexible on this issue, it could maybe help things proceed in the negotiations.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting. The internationally recognized Central Bank of Yemen has rejected a Houthi move to issue a 50 riyal coin for use in areas under its control in the north. The Houthi-controlled branch of the central bank in Sana'a is backing the circulation of the freshly minted coin. The official central bank has denounced the branch as illegal. The issuance of the new coin has deepened the financial divide in Yemen. Ahib Alfandi reports.
The central bank in Sana'a announced the release of a new 50 riyal coin. The move aims to ease the liquidity crisis and replace damaged banknotes.
The 50 riyal coin will benefit us a lot. It will replace the damaged banknotes and also make up for the paper money that used to go to waste at the grocery store, where we got no real value. The change would often come back as lollipops or leftover sweets from the shopkeeper.
Of course, this new 50 riyal coin will help the Yemeni economy. It also serves as a replacement for the notes of 10 and 20, especially because the paper money is damaged. This metal coin is a better alternative.
This move shows the deep financial divide in Yemen. Two separate monetary authorities operate in the country, one in Sana'a under the Ansar Allah group and the other in Aden under the internationally recognized government. This spell has caused a sharp difference in the dollar exchange rate, with about 535 riyals in Sana'a and over 2,800 riyals in Aden. This has led to a big rise in the prices of basic goods, especially in the south.
The monetary division has affected all aspects and sectors of the economy. It has harmed Yemeni society across all segments, weakened purchasing power, led to rising prices and the depreciation of the national currency, the Yemeni riyal. It has also caused the official economy to disappear and given rise to a parallel economy, namely the black market in the country.
Economic analysts say that moving the central bank to aid in September 2016 made the financial crisis worse. Salaries stopped being paid to employees in the northern areas and internal transfer fees increased. This doubled the suffering of citizens and deepened one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. With the financial divide going up, political solutions absent, living conditions in Yemen are persistently declining, further undermining economic stability and deepening the hardships faced by the people.
That was Ahab Alfandi reporting. And finally, moving on to South Africa, a nationwide program to develop a new HIV vaccine is facing an uncertain future. It comes after Washington abruptly withdrew at least $39 million in funding the program. The promising vaccine was just days away from beginning trials after months of critical groundwork. David Mbithi reports.
Just a week had remained before researchers in South Africa were to begin clinical trials of an HIV vaccine, and hopes were high for gaining ground against one of history's deadliest pandemics. Then the email arrived, telling them to halt their research. The United States, under the Trump administration, was withdrawing all its funding.
It was very promising work that we were doing, very basic, and the idea was that if we find a good candidate, that would eventually translate into the rest of the Brilliant Consortium. We would be able to take this through to larger animals and possibly even into human clinical trials.
Their research project, called Brilliant, was meant to be the latest to draw on the region's genetic diversity and deep expertise, which has the highest number of people living with HIV worldwide. In 2024, this region accounted for approximately 65% of all people living with HIV and 86% of children and adolescents living with HIV globally. In South Africa, which received major funding for HIV and AIDS programs, the impact is already being felt. At least 8,000 health workers in South Africa's HIV program have already been laid off, according to the government. And now the future of the HIV research program hangs in the balance.
My position is grant funded. So if there are grants, if the fund is available, the grant is there, then they're able to pay for my salary.
Glenda Gray, who heads the Brilliant program, says the African continent has been vital to the development of HIV medication, and US cuts will be challenging to replace.
Total grant was $46 million, which is about just under R1 billion. And that was divided equally in a period of 6 years. So, it was a substantial amount in our first year. We had $7 million, and this was going to be increasing because we were going to make vaccines and do clinical trials. So this is a big gap in our funding. Imagine losing almost R1 billion in 1 month and having to cut back everything and having to scale back all our plans to develop vaccines in the next 2 or 3 years.
The Brilliant program is scrambling to find money to save the project, but South Africa's government said this may be challenging.
At the moment, we are also trying to source funding to be able to continue this work, but again, we do not know whether we will be successful, and that has impact on the research, that has impact on the individuals carrying out the research.
Significant advances have included clinical trials for lenacapavir, the world's only twice-a-year shot to prevent HIV. One study to show its efficacy involved young South Africans, and the shot was recently approved for use by the US Food and Drug Administration. Now, the future of more potential groundbreaking work hangs in the balance as researchers confront more barriers along the way.
That was David Mbithi reporting. Recapping today's headlines. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the European Union will pause its trade retaliation against the United States until early next month. Hopes for breakthroughs in the latest Gaza ceasefire talks have been high, but progress has stalled after weeks of indirect negotiations in Doha. A South African program to develop a new HIV vaccine is facing an uncertain future after the US withdrawal of critical funding. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Tian Yu. Thank you for listening.